Hello, I'm your host, Peter Komendowski, and welcome to Surviving Bad, where we explore stories of survival, hope, and inspiration. Today, we're talking about first responders, real people that sometimes need real help. At times, first responders seem like superheroes, but in fact, they are people like the rest of us that step up to high stress and dangerous situations to keep us safe. And that means life can be a management for them as well. And if it creates problems, well, that's where the founders of the 1042 Project come in, Dan and Christina, who are there to help first responders that might be having problems. Welcome to the show, Dan and Christina. Thank you very much for sharing your story. I welcome you here. Dan, tell us a little bit about 1042 and how this idea began.
Yeah, absolutely. And Peter, thanks for having us on. We really appreciate you allowing us to have a platform to talk. So the 1042 Project was birthed out of my lifelong experience. I became a police officer in 2000, and I worked for 14 years, working patrol. I worked as a detective in narcotics, covering a 7-county drug task force in Des Moines and all around Des Moines. And about 8 years in, I really started struggling with mental health issues and PTSD. And some PTSI, post-traumatic stress injury, and post-traumatic stress disorder, whatever you want to call it, it's fine with us as long as you're talking about it. And so 8 years in, I really started struggling. To be honest with you, Peter, I quit wearing my bulletproof vest to work. I quit drawing my gun in times where I should have, just because I just wanted to die. I became very suicidal. I couldn't process the stuff I was dealing with. And I would drive around in my patrol car, and I would try to find places I could crash my car into and kill myself in the line of duty, so my family would be taken care of. And I was at a point where even though I had 3 kids, I didn't feel worthy to be a father. I didn't feel worthy to be a friend even at that point. So after dealing with alcoholism and pain pill addiction, once I got out of law enforcement and living out of my car, I lost my house to foreclosure. I went through a divorce, and my whole world came crashing down. And during those 7 years, I was lost. I was trying to find help, and I couldn't find help. I was looking for resources, and it was all confusing. I didn't know what to trust, who to trust. And in 2020, after leaving a very bad counseling session, I was very emotional and crying the whole night. The next day I went to work. I was still emotional wreck. And I decided at that time I was going to kill myself. I was going to leave work. And on the way home, I was going to crash my car and kill myself. I was engaged to her at the time, and she has 2 beautiful kids. And I was scared to bring my trouble into their life. So I got in my car and I drove up 65, 69 with the full intention of killing myself. And on the way there, Peter, I felt the presence of God, and I didn't I'm not a big God person. So at the time I was just like, man, I just feel this presence telling me to drive to Lake Aquabi. So I drove there. I didn't know why. I got on my knees and just prayed to God to use me or lose me. And right then he kind of showed me a vision of a police officer sitting in a jet bathtub like I used to do, just sitting in my underwear with my vodka and my hydrocodone pills and my pistol, and just seeing how many I could take and how much pressure I can put on the trigger to kill myself. And I had a whole plan to call over the county next door and have them send their rescue people, not anybody from my agency. And that day I gave my life to God, and he showed me that vision. He told me the words that we're going to show the world what help is and what it looks like. And I don't mean that in a cocky way. He literally showed it to us as we were going to buy a professional filming equipment, lighting equipment, audio equipment, and we were going to go out and travel the globe and videotape and show the first responders what help is and what it looks like. So that's how it was birthed, was through a troubling time. It's, what the devil meant for evil, God will use for good. And this is what the 1042 Project is a clear example of that.
Yeah, and you found out, like we've seen, that you're not an isolated story, that the pressures on first responders are huge, and the stigma of, to admit needing help and getting help, it's the environment's not cultured to have that level of compassion when you've always got to be on your game. What are you finding out now? Maybe Christina, you can answer to that. As you're going out there, is it surprising you how many first responders are looking to get help?
The more that I learn about it, the more I see that there is a shift that we're moving towards, but there is still a lot of work that needs to be done. I think it depends on the culture of the department, depending on where the first responder is, and basically the culture that they're working in. Because we've kind of seen, if you would agree, that it kind of depends on where they are, who they're working with, and how much it's accepted. So it can vary drastically. We've spoken to first responders that are not comfortable at all coming out and saying that they need help, that they're struggling. And then we've also spoken to first responders that knew that it would be accepted, that they were able to go to their higher ups and say, I need help, this is what I'm struggling with. And they knew that they would get that help and they would be supported along the way. Some of them are, it's going well enough that they don't even have to worry about if they're going to lose their job or not. And then there's first responders on the other side where they feel like their whole career and their well-being for their family is in jeopardy if they say anything. So we've kind of seen both ends of the spectrum, and there are people in there all along the way. But like I said, we are really working towards a shift to really just change the culture as a whole, to change the temperature, because that's really what it's going to take. We need people to be aware of what's going on, what first responders are dealing with, first of all, because I know that there are people, the general public isn't fully aware. So it just takes that discussion, I guess, to really just raise awareness and have everyone be on the same page.
Well, those are great points. We're going to take a short break. We come back, we're going to continue our conversation with Dan and Christina. Stay tuned. You don't want to miss this.
The black truck? Hey, Christina from accounting.
Yeah, hi.
Hey, I used to date a girl named Christina.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and then she dumped me for my best friend. You want to see some photos of them that I took?
I don't.
I thought we talked about this, buddy.
Buzzed and overshared again?
Yeah,
Yeah. I'm gonna call a car.
that's a smart idea.
So yeah, I know, that's why I did it.
Hey, you're gonna get back to the top of the mountain.
Does that mean I'm gonna get back with Christina?
No.
Oh.
No.
Every second, 127 new devices connect to the internet. You can feel it happening, our digital world expanding with every breath. We're entering a whole new era of connectivity, and MediaCom will be ready to power it with one of the nation's first 10G platforms. We'll be bringing you more speed, more capacity, more security, and the power to do more than you ever dreamed possible.
Welcome back to Surviving Bad. We're here with Dan and Christina and talking about the 1042 project and the unique combination of perspectives they share when it comes to the unmet needs of first responders. And when you started to get out there, Dan, you learned some interesting lessons from the people you talked to.
I really did, Peter. You know, when I was going through my situation, I truly felt like I was broken and I was the only one experiencing this. I just thought, like, there's something wrong with me. When we started to build this organization, we started meeting first responders from around the country as we started to travel around the country. And the thing that we talk about the most that we love about it is when they hear my story or have a conversation with us and they realize that their story is just like mine, you know, maybe not the same history, but they're the same symptoms, the same PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. When they realize that they are not broken and alone, in fact, they may be a little broken, but they have a whole community out there of people that feel just like them and are going through it. And when they see that, their face just lights up with joy, their eyes get big, and you see that hope kind of come back, like, wait a minute, I can get through this. This guy did it. He just told me about all these other people that did it. I can do it. And that's one of the great things about what we're doing is just seeing that I am not the exception as a first responder. I am the common story. There's nothing fancy about my story. I wasn't involved in a shooting. Mine is cumulative PTSD from over the years of just seeing trauma after trauma. You know, most first responders will see more trauma in 1 week than a human being will see their whole life. And when your brain sees that stuff, when your brain goes through trauma, it takes 30 hours for the chemicals to get back to normal in your brain. 30 hours. And first responders generally have an hour or two between calls if they're lucky. So yeah, this is just a common story. This is nothing special. We've just decided we're going to build an organization to show everybody that this is common and that there is hope and there is a path to getting help and getting recovered.
There is an interesting, idea that Christina shared, that the cultures are very different where you go. Some places are very embracing of the idea, and other places, and that really is the influence of stigma, that if treatment and admitting you have problems or need help is stigmatized, then that can be part of, institutionalized by the organization where people work. But in the last year with COVID, we've seen the door open to people talking about mental health. Now, is that also happening with first responders? Is it becoming slightly more acceptable for first responders to come out in the open about some of the challenges they're facing mentally?
I would say so. Yeah, absolutely. And that's another thing that we get a chance to discuss as we're speaking with first responders is you get to hear the stories of, people who have been in the first responder world for decades, and they can really attest to how much different it is now compared to how it used to be. And even very recently, I would say that COVID maybe helped a little bit in that sense. It really kind of got everybody talking about mental health and bringing first responders right along on that journey, which is great because it really needs to be discussed. And we just really love that it's more and more of a conversation and being discussed openly and just accepted for what it is instead of so much judgment.
Yeah, I really feel like we're at this curve in the road, Peter, where everybody's going to quit denying PTSD or PTSI in first responders, and people are realizing you don't have to be in a police shooting to have brain injury from trauma. And as we travel the country, some of the big cities like Boston, for example, is to me one of the greatest police departments for the resources they provide their first responders. We've had the blessing to speak with Boston police officers and record with them, and it's amazing how some of these departments are figuring it out. Honestly, it's a lot of the smaller and the rural agencies where there's no resources. Some of the big departments now have a lot, but most of the rural and smaller communities, they just have nothing. And
the media doesn't help you. I was talking to a police chief not long ago, and we were talking about alcoholism and self-medicating, in the ranks. He says, it's hard. You have all these TV shows, cop shows, firefighter shows, FBI shows. And he goes, and every time they're relaxing or they're after work, they have a beer in their hand or a drink in their hand. He says, it's normalized behavior to self-medicate and even admit. And so we've got a whole generation of kids and people watching shows that are saying, well, yeah, first responders' life's tough. You got to drink after a tough day. That's probably not the same message you're sharing.
No, not so much. But you want to go on that? Ouch. I'm sorry.
I would agree with you 100%. That's another thing that we've gotten to discuss is how culturally accepted it is to self-medicate, especially with alcohol. That one's very you can do that in public and people aren't going to look at you and say, wow, what are you doing? You know what I mean? So that's kind of a dangerous one, really, because it is used so much for people to self-medicate, and it is such a slippery slope, and that's really not the healthy way to process these things. And I think most people know that, but like you discussed, it's on TV and it happens so much, but there are much better ways to handle the trauma and to heal from those, for sure.
And then
we're going to take a short break now. But when you come back, we're going to ask you to look back at this journey and talk about some of the realizations that changed your lives and your hopes for the future of the 1042 Project. See y'all after the break.
Multiple studies have shown that marijuana can slow both driver reaction and response time, which can be really dangerous. He's here. He's here. Wait. What? I can't drive. Why? My. Oh.
Every second, 127 new devices connect to the internet. You can feel it happening, our digital world expanding with every breath. We're entering a whole new era of connectivity, and MediaCom will be ready to power it with one of the nation's first 10G platforms. We'll be bringing you more speed, more capacity, more security, and the power to do more than you ever dreamed possible.
Welcome back to Surviving Bad. We're talking with Dan and Christina from the 1042 Project about their mission to provide a path of support and healing to first responders and their families. Tell us a little bit about what kind of stuff you do.
Sure. So we do multiple things. One of the first things we do, actually in everything we do, it's about meeting people where they are. Some people aren't ready to go to a 2-day mental health conference for first responders. Some people may not be ready for a 30-day treatment facility for PTSD. We want to meet people where they are. And if you're somebody like me and you're sitting in your bathtub with a pistol in your hand and alcohol and pills laying next to you, we want to meet you there as well. And how we do that, Peter, is we work on peeling the onion. If somebody's struggling, we are creating a video library on our website at 1042project.org. It is being reconstructed right now, but there's videos up there, and our whole goal is to have categories of videos that first responders can go to, created by us, fellow peers, talking about mental health and some of the resources that are out there. We're going to be telling stories of first responders who have gone through the depths of hell and now have hope, and what their pathway looked like. And we're just going to try to normalize what is happening to us first responders around the country and normalize it. So people will be able to come to our website, click on whatever category you're struggling with, whether it's alcoholism, pill addiction, suicidal thoughts, no matter what it may be. You can click on the category and you can watch 5 to 15-minute videos of us just giving a little bit of hope, talking with first responders around the world, and also meeting with the resources that are around the country, because that's the big thing is right now first responders are having trouble finding the resources that are out there. Mm. So on our website, you're going to be able to watch the videos that we're making with all the resources that are out there. And we just want to get them, we want to just sit down with them and film with them so they can tell what kind of help they provide and how it does help our first responders. And that way people can watch that in their own time discreetly with nobody knowing. Everything's confidential here. And they can just watch a 5 to 15-minute video of hope. So if a firefighter is getting off a bad call and he's laying in his bunk, he can pull out his phone. We're building an app, and you can go to the app or the website and just get a little bit of hope and encouragement from fellow peers. And
we hear in teaching and other professions that there's a shortage of qualified people getting those jobs. Is that the same problem with first responders?
Yes. When I first applied for the agency I work for, there was almost 100 people that applied for 2 jobs. And now when they have an application process, they're lucky to get 5 to 10 people that can actually pass the test and get through it. Part of the problem that's happening is you got to have people in the streets, you got to have people behind the wheel. So what's happening, Peter, is you're starting to see the downslide in professionalism in police departments, and they're having to hire people that maybe aren't qualified or maybe wouldn't have been hired a couple years ago. And to fill the boots, they're putting a badge on them and allowing them to go out to the street. So, and I'm not saying that about all the new officers. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that as throughout the country, we're starting to see the hiring requirements be lower and lower and lower.
So in a sense, keeping the first responders healthy is an important aspect of keeping the workforce strong too.
Keeping the people you have is so important. And at the 1042 Project, that's what we aim to do. We aim to equip and restore. If we can equip our first responders when they come in, and we can take them around the shoulder, put our arm around them and say, listen, son, this is what this job's going to be like. This is how it's going to, these are the things you're going to see. This is how you process them. Here's my phone number. Call me if you need help. And getting that process where we can equip these first responders when they're getting in, maybe we can get them to retirement and they don't have to only make it 14 years like I did, or a lot of them are committing suicide in mass numbers. Police officers in this country are taking their own lives a lot faster than their lives are being taken from them doing the job. A lot of the stuff that's happening is happening we're doing to ourselves. We're taking our own lives. And 1042 project, we're aiming to fix that. Another thing we do is we travel around to conferences around the US, mental health symposiums just for first responders. And we travel to those, we set up a booth, we bring all of our recording equipment so we can record videos. But one of the cool things we do, Peter, is we fly in first responders from around the world and their spouses. And we want to be able to send them to first responder conferences so we can just be there to walk alongside them and have a couple days of fun and just feeding life into each other. So that's one of the things we do is we're aiming to have first responders and their spouses follow us. It's a big expense and we are a nonprofit, but we believe in God and his provisions that he'll take care of that.
Well, these are great points. Now we're going to take a short break, and afterwards we're going to ask Dan and Christina to share some final comments, insights, and this inspiration. Stay tuned. You don't want to miss this.
Today, more than ever, you need fast, reliable internet. At MediaCom, we want you to know you can count on us. Our fiber-powered 100% gigabit technology network was built for the future. We have enormous capacity and power and 99.99% network reliability. So even though these are uncertain times, we're prepared. And you can be certain we'll keep your world connected. Every second, 127 new devices connect to the internet. You can feel it happening, our digital world expanding with every breath. We're entering a whole new era of connectivity, and MediaCom will be ready to power it with one of the nation's first 10G platforms. We'll be bringing you more speed, more capacity, more security, and the power to do more than you ever dreamed possible.
Welcome back. Today on Surviving Bad, we're talking about first responders, the heroes in our midst, working under intense pressures that sometimes need help themselves. Let's see what insights, advice, and inspiration Dan and Christina have to share. Christina, talk about the families of these first responders too. How do you engage them and help them deal with these problems?
So at 1042 Project, we fully believe in a full family approach because we know how crucial the role of the spouse and the family plays in the life of the first responder. And we also know that the family is impacted hugely as well. So we want to offer support there too. And so we definitely want to share that family of first responders are always welcome to reach out to us, and we can connect you to any resource you're open to as well. Whether that is therapy, we can connect you to that. Just really whatever you're needing in that moment. We know that it varies person to person, family to family. So same as first responder, we want to meet you where you are and help you with the resource that you are open to. And we just want to also share the message to the family how important it is to be that safe space for the first responder, because you're the first person they're going to reach out to. And I know that made a huge difference to Daniel in his healing journey.
Is the first contact with you often a family member or the actual first responder?
So far, I would say it's been the first responder, but interestingly enough, when we have conversations with the family members, they share more. And I think that when they realize that we help family members as well, I think we're going to start hearing more and more from family members. But yeah, so far we're initially hearing from first responders.
Yeah, and really the most powerful thing you can do for the fellow first responders that are out there is it's talking to that one person, that first person you can finally be open, honest, and transparent with. For me, it was Christina. If she hadn't have been so loving and caring when I finally, after years, opened up and started talking to her about what I was struggling with, had she have made fun of me or even made a weird face or said, "What are you talking about?" Honestly, I probably would have shut down. She handled it so well. And it's so important that you guys just reach out to somebody, your spouse, a family member, somebody. Just start with that one person. As a first responder, it's like we're carrying around these chains of just calls that we've been on and all this trauma we've carried, and find that one person that can help you unlock that first chain and just release that. And you're going to start to feel some relief. And as you tell the next person and you're open, honest, and transparent, you're going to start to feel better. But just reach out to that first person. If you can't reach out to anybody in your life, call me, call my cell phone directly. And we'll put that at the end of this, and call me directly. We'd love to help you.
You know, Christina, in all my years of meeting with people, with the spouses of people that have dealt with these challenges, I am just amazed at their strength and fortitude. How do you find the strength to cope and survive?
Yeah. I would say having a deep level of empathy for where the struggles are coming from. I know firsthand that the symptoms that present when your first responder spouse is struggling, those are challenging. But just know that it comes from a place of pain. They're struggling. They're not trying to be difficult or struggle in the hard ways that they are, because it's hard for them too. You know, they don't want to be going through things the way that they are. They're just doing the best that they can with what they have. And so I think it's so important to just understand that being present with a level of empathy and making it a goal to make your relationship in your home the safe space really opens the doors to better communication and healing both ways. And progress can be made, things can get better, and there really is hope.
Well, that is good to hear. And one last comment from you, Dan, a first responder watching this, or a family member, a first responder. One last bit of advice for him.
I want you guys to know that you are not alone. There's a whole community out here of first responders that have walked this path and this journey. You do not have to do this alone. There is a team here at 1042 Project, and there's other organizations around this country that are here to help. And just click on our website and check out the resources that we have. And if you need help, please reach out to us. We will be there for you.
Thank you so very much. And thank you all for watching us today. Check out our website, ahealthyiowa.org, and keep your eye on MediaCom MC22 for our next episode of Surviving Bad, where we explore stories of survival, hope, and inspiration on MediaCom MC22, your local programming leader.